right, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know that everyone has very busy schedules, so we appreciate that you are here. Kelly and I will be doing the presentation for tonight, and so we may not be monitoring the Q&A feature. So we're hoping that, we're going to go through a lot of information tonight. If you guys do have some questions, you could certainly pop it in there, and we'll do our best to kind of go through what we can at the end. But we are so happy that you're here. We're going to go over a lot of stuff. This is being recorded, so if there is anything that you do miss, or if you do want to get back to it, you can certainly check it out on our YouTube page. We'll post it there as soon as we are done, probably sometime before the end of the week. Right? What do you think?
Either tomorrow or early next week.
Okay. Good call. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Again, we actually met with our seniors who are hoping to apply to a four-year college. We met with them on Monday and Tuesday. So during tutorial, and a lot of students came. We had a very good showing. We went over a lot of information. We're going to go over some of that and a little bit more tonight so that parents are also in the loop. But as you can see on the agenda, we're going to talk about post-secondary options. We will discuss the college application process, tools and resources, and next steps. And there's a lot to that. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So we have a good percentage of our students that attend community college right out of high school. I think we have about a third of our class from last year that have chosen to do that, and it's a great option for our students. Thankfully, too, we have an amazing community college nearby that's one of the top in the state in DVC. Las Positas is also a great campus, and we have a good relationship with both, and they do visit our campus in the spring to go over the application process, to answer any sort of questions, and to kind of help with that entire process. Typically, like I said, that does start in the second semester, so nothing that you need to worry about right now. Right now, you could certainly, explore, see what they have to offer, see what kinds of degrees and certificates that they have. But yes, they will come usually around February, and Ms. Nichols will be setting that up and making sure that students are aware of it so that they can sign up to see it. It's a great opportunity for our students, and we just want to make sure that we mention it because a third of our students go there as their first choice. There's a couple of different programs that they do have. On the next slide, we'll kind of go over that. But here we go. Next slide. There we go. All right. So in addition to earning your associate's degree, there's a lot of different degrees and certificates that you can earn, especially in the career technical area. But there's also the transfer path that a lot of our students take advantage of. And this is one where it's a great program. Essentially, you're spending 2 years at the community college as long as you're going full time and taking advantage of the units that you're able to take. Essentially, what they're hoping is that you get to 60 units, and then you're in a position to be able to apply to a four-year. They help you meet your general ed requirements and your major prerequisites, and you can apply to transfer in the beginning of your second year. So a lot of kids will complete that and then transfer over to college as a junior, as a third-year student. And so it's a great opportunity for kids, and it's a wonderful option. We have a lot of students who started out at a community college and were able to transfer to their dream school, whatever that might be. Maybe it's Davis, maybe it's Berkeley, UCLA, but we have a lot of students who apply and do that. But there's also another piece to it too. There's the TAG program. I think it's on the next screen there. But there is something called the TAG, which is the Transfer Agreement Guarantee. It guarantees admission to one of the 6 eligible UC campuses. There are a few campuses that are not participating in it, but there are a lot of great universities in the UCs that do, where you essentially, you meet with a counselor at the community college, you go over what you're hoping to major in. They will help you figure out what courses that you need to be able to transfer, and it's a guarantee. Again, you apply pretty early in the spring of your first year at community college, But once you complete those GEs and the prerequisites and, maintain good standing, then you are guaranteed admission. So it's a wonderful opportunity for kids. We have a lot of students that take advantage of that. And one of the best things too is that you can get those first 2 years with the first time, full-time free tuition, which is a great program in the state of California. And so, it's really hard to pass up when you have an opportunity to be able to get free tuition for those first 2 years and then transfer to the school of your choice. CSU also has that option as well. Guarantees admission to the CSU system, same major prep for transfer to any of the 23 CSU campuses. This one is a little different. You do apply in the fall of your second year at community college. But definitely just another great option for students if they want to take advantage of that. Another thing that a lot of our students are starting to gain a lot of interest in is our technical programs, which are offered in many different areas, especially they have a ton of these degrees and certificates as well at the community college. But then there's also very specific programs like a cosmetology school, culinary schools, things like that, where you can get specific certificates in certain areas, whether it's hospitality, like I said, cosmetology and the health sciences, cybersecurity. There's lots of different options for students where they can get in there, do a technical program. Some of them could be within a year to 2 years, and they could go straight into a very good paying job. So that's another great option that a lot of our kids are starting to show a lot of interest in. So we want to make sure that students are aware of that and check it out and do some exploration around that. There we go. Hold on a second. We're getting to the next slide.
Oh.
Thank you. Okay, sorry. All right. So the other thing too that is very much growing, I think everywhere, are the trades and apprenticeships. This is a wonderful opportunity for a lot of students to be able to get on-the-job training and earn money while you are doing it. Obviously, it is very competitive, definitely, but because you end up with a great career after. But this is a wonderful opportunity for our students as well if they are graduating from high school and they may not want to go on to the 4-year path. They're not quite sure, but they do know that they do like to be hands-on, or they're interested in one of these areas where you can do an apprenticeship and learn while you earn, essentially. A lot of apprenticeships, depending on the trade, they can last anywhere from like a year to sometimes even 4 years of schooling. So I know that I have a couple of former students who are doing it, and they essentially are on the job 4 days a week, and then 1 day a week they go for classes. So they do like actual classroom instruction work. And so, but during that time in their apprenticeship, they are earning a good living. And then later on, when they become a journeyman, of course, their career tends to flourish after that. But we have a lot of students who are starting to show interest in that. And so we're hoping to have a lot more of that represented at like our career fairs. All right, on the next slide. And then the military, we have a lot of students as well who have expressed interest in the military. We do have all the branches that visit us at Cal High pretty much throughout the school year. So, and anytime if there is a student who's like, oh, I missed this one, I know Mrs. Nichols will have like another date already set up with them, because they do like to come often and make sure that they answer any questions. As you can see there, the Marines, she is getting that scheduled on her calendar and will be announcing that. The Air Force is coming by on October 30th. Navy is coming by as well on that same day. Army is coming at the end of the month here in September 25th. And the Coast Guard is going to be represented at our college and career fair, which is, we'll talk about a little bit later, but it's our district college and career fair that's going to happen on October 23rd. So if you have any interest or just want to learn more about any of these branches, definitely come and check that out and see Ms. Nichols. And by the way, if I didn't mention it, Ms. Nichols is our college and career advisor, and she's located in the counseling office. She's a wealth of information. All right, next slide.
Great. And I think, yeah, I can take it for a little bit, Cheryl. So, talking about four-year colleges and universities, a lot of kind of what's happening right now is having to do with students pursuing this path, just because it is that time of year. We are just kicking off application season. And there tends to be a lot more uncertainty around this. There's so many variables, as many of you know. So that's why a lot of the questions and things are coming up are around this right now. The students pursuing other paths, they might need help figuring out what they're doing, but how to get there and being able to get into certain programs is a lot more straightforward. So kind of another reason why some of our students do pursue other paths is to have that clearly in mind and not go through the stress of the senior year. So thinking about the four-year colleges and universities, I tend to use the terms interchangeably, but sometimes we're talking about college with community colleges and universities with four-year institutions. So just bear with me on that. But really, like I said, it's kicking off now, but applications go all the way through the early spring. And these schools can either be public, meaning they're state funded, or private. They are their own entity with their own funding sources. So for our California in-state options, you'll hear about our California State University System, or CSUs, or our University of California system, which are UCs. Both fantastic systems. We are so lucky, and we tell our students this all the time, and I think they know that we are really blessed with the colleges that we have access to for in-state tuition in California, just really top-notch worldwide institutions. So CSUs tend to be a little bit more hands-on learning, and UCs tend to be a bit more research-focused. That's not clear-cut or mutually exclusive in any way, just generally what we're thinking of when we think of those systems. So it may surprise you that both of these systems are test-blind admissions, meaning they won't use SAT or ACT scores. So just keeping that in mind, but they do have minimum A through G requirements, which A through G are the set of college prep classes that students have to have completed with Cs or better to be able to be admitted to these universities. If you have more questions about that, we're not getting into it for the sake of today's presentation, but we do have a video on our YouTube channel. I think it's like intro to college options or something like that, that we did last spring that goes really in depth into that aspect of things. With the four-year colleges, I just told a parent yesterday I should tattoo it on my head because it depends is kind of the thing we say the most, just because there is so much variability when we're talking about private schools in particular or out of states, because they get to decide their own set of guidelines for everything. So when it comes to a question like, do I need a third year of science, or do I need a letter of recommendation? There's a lot of it depends, which is why this is a very research heavy process. And a lot of our focus today is going to be on tools and resources for students to get those answers they need. So breaking down some pieces of it that might not be familiar to everyone, when we're talking about applications, they'll have different deadline types. So these are some of the most common ones we see. It's definitely not a comprehensive list, but I would say probably 95% of what we see falls into these categories. So we have your regular decision deadline. That's just your standard average deadline for the college. It's typically going to be the latest deadline that they have. So, and sometimes it's the only one they have. So for CSUs and UCs, for instance, they are November 30th. I think some of them might have a little wiggle room into December this year. I don't know if November 30th is a weekend or something, right? But there's just the one deadline. Early action, on the other hand, so a school might have a January 1st regular decision deadline, but they might say November 1st is early action. And really the benefit of early action is you get an earlier response. The caveat with this, that sounds great. You would love to know earlier, but you need to have your best foot forward ready for that application date. It's definitely not worth it to submit an early application if it's not your best self on that paper or electronic application, I guess I should say. That and early decision often gets confused. Early action, you're just, early bird getting that done. getting it off your plate. Early decision is a lot more intense. It is a binding agreement. You can only apply to one college early decision, as opposed to you could do as many early action deadlines as you have ready to go. Early decision means if you get into that school, that is where you are going to attend. The student has to sign something, the parent has to sign something, we as the counselor have to sign, that everyone understands that this is a binding agreement. So it is something to be taken seriously, and really it should only be used if the student knows in their heart of hearts that they would be perfectly happy to withdraw all of their other applications if they were accepted to that school, because that would be what was expected of them. Rolling decision, that one, it comes in waves. It's similar to early action, where submitting early gets you an earlier response. The difference with rolling is a lot of times you get the decision in waves too. So the earlier you submit, the earlier you might hear back. And some rolling decision deadlines start as early as kind of now. So that's not to say you need to do it now. It's just whenever you have it ready, you can go ahead and let them know. Creating a college list. So this is something that we talk to students extensively about. We started talking with them about this. I have a very clear memory of it junior year. They probably heard about it earlier, but really what we're telling them is that we need diversity in their college list, and to be very intentional about what colleges they're including. So how they're determining if a school, if they're likely to get into it, meaning their statistics are higher than the typical admission profile for who that school admits. A target school means there's a solid chance of them being able to be admitted. A reach school means their stats might be a little lower than what's typically accepted. And really, most students, their list consists of these 3 types of schools. You may also have heard the term safety school used instead of likely. We at the Cal High Counseling Office really try to encourage students to use the word likely, because it has the connotation, a more positive connotation, right? A safety school makes it sound like it's a backup option. It's not as desirable, when we want students to be really excited about every college on their list. With thousands of colleges, not an exaggeration, in this country, there's so many out there that we really don't want our students to be settling for something just because they are likely to get into it doesn't mean it's not a fantastic college where they would have a really great experience. So if they're not happy with their likely schools, we say keep looking, there's something else out there for you. So the wildcard schools are their own category. Those aren't required to be in anyone's list. We just use that for the schools that are so we say highly selective. I think of them as highly rejective, just because exceptional candidates are really just as likely to be denied as the people who end up being admitted. They're just those like single-digit percentages of acceptance rates. So it's really hard to predict, which is why it kind of is its own special category and should not be the bulk of anyone's list. So if you're doing the math here, this ends up being about like 10 to 12 schools. We really say that the maximum a student should be applying to is around 15. Any more than that, and this is already a stressful time, but it just escalates, and you end up not putting your best application forward, which is truly the biggest downfall of that. Students think they might be increasing their chances by applying to more schools, but actually you're spreading yourself so thinly that all of your applications suffer. So that's really why our guidance is what it is. Not to mention their time, energy, sanity, and of course their parents' money, because applications are not cheap. There's the application fee, the fee to send any test scores if needed, transcripts if needed, not from Cal High, but maybe like a DVC class that someone took. So that all adds up. So just being mindful of that when students are building their college list. Ideally, now they've started to add colleges to the list. I always encourage students to maybe add more to begin with and then shave some off at the end. But we should be reaching a place where things are starting to get a little firmed up with the college list. Yeah, so apparently I already had this in there. I just talked ahead of it a little bit. The idea that more is not more. The other part that we have on here, and what I am saying by paradox of choice, is that we see seniors who have applied to many colleges and have gotten into them, which sounds fabulous, and it is, objectively good, but then they're just paralyzed because they didn't do the research beforehand. And now they're faced with this really daunting task of choosing which to go to. When in reality, maybe if they had done research at the beginning, they wouldn't be in that boat. So really narrowing it down and imagining where the student should see themselves, we definitely tell them there shouldn't be a college on your list that you wouldn't be happy to submit a deposit to in May. All right, so the senior guidebook, we know this is a lot of information, so this is your seniors, best friend this year. Lots of the questions that we get, all the answers are here, right? So we hear all these things all the time. And what we told your students is we know that their hours they're working on this might not always be within the school day. So if it's, 10:30 at night, it might be even later than that, but we really try to tell them that they should be sleeping, but they might be working on their applications and not have the answer or access to the counselors. So we have this resource so they always have everything at their fingertips. So this is on the counseling page. You can see in the sidebar here, it's under college and career, but right now we even have it linked on the homepage. It's like one of the first buttons you see. It says senior guide. So that's where all this is. There's a bunch of quick links, kind of step-by-step guides on how to do things. So that's all there waiting for them on the website. So another resource that we have that you might have heard of before is Navian. It has a slightly new look. We started to adopt this last year. They did a little bit of a rebrand. So this is what your student sees when they log in. And there's lots of different things in here that can be helpful to them when they're navigating this process. And this is true for any path that they're pursuing, not just four-year admission or four-year universities, which is a common misconception that we hear. So if a student clicks, actually, I learned this today, thanks to a student, that this is different. Did you know that, Ms. Youngberg? They just changed this on us. Instead of it being the initials, there's a new About Me right to the right of the planner. So that will be where all this lives now. But they could add their test scores if they want. They could delete test scores if they don't want them in there. There's also surveys from your school, which is important. We'll talk about letter of recommendation in just a little bit, and that's where that gets used. There's also self-discovery tools, lots and lots of different self-assessments that we as adults, like working adults, would have to pay money for. I know I took the Strengths Explorer. I had to pay for that in grad school, and our students all get it for free. So really just ways to learn about themselves. This could be great for students still deciding a major, maybe students still figuring out what path is right for them. Also, it can be really helpful for students learning or trying to write about themselves in their college essays. Sometimes it's really hard to think about how you're perceived by the outside world, so maybe this could jog your brain in terms of what your strengths are and then help you come up with anecdotes and examples of how to show that in your essays. So lots of different reasons to do them, and they're all located in Navian. So this, I think we've talked about before with you all, but we've definitely talked about it with your students. These are the scattergrams that are available in Navian. Every year we have our seniors in May after application season tell us the result of their college admissions process. So where they were accepted, where they were denied or waitlisted, and where they ended up attending. So with all of that data, Navian makes these scatter plots that show how students from our school fared in the college admissions process. They're also piloting a new test optional feature, so I'll be curious to see how that is now that we have a few cycles of that under our belts. But this can be a really useful tool in students helping figure out if the school is a likely target or a reach for them. And these are all available for all colleges that over a certain number of students have applied to. Another thing in Navian that I can't recommend highly enough are our college rep visits. Ms. Nichols, that Ms. Youngberg was talking about earlier, she schedules all of these. She really makes an effort to look at where our students are applying and getting those reps to our campus. We already have almost 70 scheduled for this year. And students can do this in their Naviance page. It's on the homepage, but you can see the full list under college visits. And the reason this is so critical and I think underused is the people coming to our campus are our regional representatives. A lot of times it's the people reviewing our specific students' applications. So it's a great person to ask about, how to best portray yourself, certain nuanced questions about the application, but also really leaning on them to learn what their campus is like. You can't always get a sense of that from a college website. You might not be able to go and travel and see all of these campuses. So being able to talk to them and ask questions, they love when students are themselves in these meetings and get to ask questions that matter to them. So you might ask about like certain clubs or what majors are like. My favorite question to always ask in these is, what's your favorite tradition that your university has? I think it says a lot about the campus culture. But just getting a sense of what types of students really thrive at the institutions can give our kids a sense of would they be happy there. So these are happening for the next few months. There's pretty much one every day, if not multiple a day. So definitely take a look at that. I recommend everyone try and attend at least a couple. And I challenge them to attend for colleges that they maybe haven't heard of. Maybe they're curious, but not the ones that they feel like they already know for certain that they're attending or applying to. All right, so like I said, lots to do in Naviance, but really these are the key tasks that we talked about with your students at the beginning of this week. So if they are applying to colleges at all, right, this includes community colleges, trade schools, they need to update their colleges I'm applying to list. If they're using the Common App application, which we'll talk about in a little bit, they should match their Common App account. This would be where they add teacher letter of recommendation requests and request transcripts for their institutions. I will say now, and I think we'll probably say it again, you do not need to request transcripts for UC or CSU really until they decide that they'd be attending those schools. There's very few of them that they might get a to-do item after they've applied, but none of those schools want a transcript at the time of application. So please don't add those. All right, I'll turn it back over to Cheryl.
Okay, so as we are going to go over a lot of the four-year piece of it too, including letters of recommendations, but first let's go over some of the application systems. I know that there's lots of different things that everyone keeps hearing. Okay, where do I apply to UC? Where do I apply to CSU? What about the Common App? What's that? So Cal State schools, the CSU schools, they all apply through this one site, Cal State Apply. It is one application, and then you are able to choose which campuses you would like to apply to. Once you do choose what those campuses are, it will ask you also what majors you want to apply to at that institution. So all CSU schools will be going through Cal State Apply. And then for the UCs, they will be going through the UC application. This one is the same, where one application will be going to whatever schools that you choose in the UC system. Between the Cal State Apply and the UC application, there is no personal essays for the Cal State for CSU schools. So a lot of that is really just making sure that you're accurately reporting the grades that you've earned in high school. Okay. For the UC application, there is writing that you do have to do. There are, I believe, 8 prompts in which students are able to choose 4 of them. So they're already up, and hopefully some kids have already taken a peek at it and just maybe start doing an outline of it and figuring out what they might want to write about. But that is something that you want to take some time on, nothing you want to do like the night before, one that you definitely want to be able to read over and make sure. I think one of the more challenging things, especially with that one, is that like you can't write this 5-page essay. They want to know pretty much everything in 350 words or less on each question. So make sure that it's clear, it's concise, and that you're getting your point across. But we will also have some, personal insight question workshops and make sure that we are, helping students if they have any questions to come and see us. Common App is another one that is very used all the time because there's probably well over 1,000 schools that are a part of Common App. So this is the one where they are connected. It is yet another application. It does also require a personal essay on this site. if you are applying to certain schools. But yes, many private and out-of-state schools do utilize Common App. So the ease of that is that, you can have that all pretty much in one place for any of your non-UC CSU schools. So creating that account in there would be helpful if you are considering any of those schools. And then there are also some schools that are direct to institution, like you go straight to, Arizona State and apply directly to that university through their application. You can do the same with like University of Nevada. Lots of different ones out there are ones where you can, you might be able to use Common App, but you can also apply directly with their own application. So those are basically the anything else that we have out there. All right, so on the next page, FERPA, this is something that, we talked to the kids already about earlier this week, and we know that it can be confusing, but we just want to make sure that we emphasize the importance of making sure that this is done. This essentially allows us and gives us permission to send all your educational documents on your behalf. Okay, so it does require that you complete this. As you can see there, we do send off your transcripts, we send off our letters of recommendation, but we will not do that unless you have waived your right to review all recommendations and supporting documents. I know that might seem like, wait a second, that doesn't sound right, but it is what is encouraged by the colleges. And to be honest with you, that's what a lot of teachers prefer too. There are some teachers who probably wouldn't write a letter if the student did not waive their rights. Really, what the colleges tell us is that by waiving your rights, or if you do not waive your rights, then they don't place a lot of value on the letter of recommendation because they cannot trust that it's written honestly and authentically. So we want to make sure that you are represented in the best light and that they do evaluate your letters of rec. So what you're going to need to do is go and sign off on that. It's on the Common App. You can waive your rights to all your recommendations, supporting documents. Go ahead and sign. And that'll give us permission to be able to send that off for you. All right, so I think okay, here we go. So as we are talking about letters of recommendation, which we're gonna get started on right here, first, I think the biggest thing is a lot of students are like, I don't know if I need one, should I just ask for one? So we kind of broke it down here. So hopefully it's a little easier to understand, but for the UC and the CSU, they do not want a letter or a counselor letter from a teacher or a counselor, okay? Even if they did write one, and even if you're like, well, maybe I'll send it, they will not consider it and they will not evaluate it, okay? So just remember that if you know that you're only applying to UCs and CSUs, then you actually don't need to worry about a letter of recommendation. All right, if you're looking at any sort of private institutions, there's a good chance that they may require one. As they are private institutions, they get to kind of decide what they want and how they want. So you're going to find some private schools that are going to say, you're okay without a counselor recommendation. We might want one teacher recommendation. And then there are going to be other ones that are a little more specific as far as what they want. Same thing with out of state. It all just depends on the college, and you're going to have to go onto their website and say, oh, I've always wanted to apply to, Boise State or something, and you would go on their website and check to see what is required and if they do require a letter of recommendation. Some do and some don't. It just all depends. Community college, they do not require any sort of letter of recommendation, so that is not something you have to worry about. If you're interested in applying to a military academy, that would be a yes. You will need letters of recommendation, and there is quite a process with that. So if that is something you're interested in, hopefully you've already started that process. And if you haven't and are considering it, make sure you talk with your counselor about it if you have any questions, okay? And then the military, if you're hoping to join one of those branches, you do not need a letter of recommendation. We really do emphasize, I know a lot of kids are just like, well, I don't know what I do need, or I might apply to this. And so maybe I'll just ask for a letter just in case. As much as that sounds like a great idea, we really encourage you to not do that. I think that, many teachers are writing dozens of letters, counselors are writing, well up to 40 to 50 letters each season. And we want to do our very best on them. And oftentimes we're doing it outside of our contract hours. And we're doing it because we want to write the best letter for you. So make sure that if you are required to request a letter, that you're doing so and not just doing it just in case. All right. Okay, so another thing here on the Common App, this is actually super helpful. This kind of helps you get organized with UCs and CSUs. Obviously, you'll have your own website and you'll know where you're applying to. But if you have many schools that you're applying to through the Common Application, there is this great requirements grid that just kind of outlines it for you as far as what you need, how many letters you might need, the deadline types that they offer, the fee, are you going to have to write an essay for them? Do you have to have the SAT, ACT? It's all kind of in this nice grid. So when you do go on to your Common Application, it's through dashboard, application requirements, and you can narrow it down. I think you could even like do like all the colleges out there that is on the Common App. It's like this 10-page list or 50-page list, whatever it is. Or you can just select your colleges only that you're applying to, and it'll line it out nicely and let you know exactly what is needed. So it's a great place to start when you're trying to get organized and figure things out. All
yeah.
Right.
I'm going to jump in for a second, Cheryl, and just say we did have a question in the chat, that fabulous question. It was asking about other recommenders. So if you're looking at the grid here, TE stands for teacher evaluation. So you can see a few of these do want a teacher evaluation. There's one here that's OE, which is other evaluation. And I'll let Ms. Youngberg talk about what that is and how you would go about the process for that, if that is a requirement for you.
Yes. Is that on another slide, or you want me to talk about that right
now?
No,
it wasn't. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you are, so say, for example, you are applying to a university where you're allowed to submit some other recommenders that are not teachers and not your counselor. Maybe it's a former coach, maybe it's a boss you had, maybe it's someone within your church that are writing one for you. You are able to do that. That is going to be done, and you are going to be requesting those directly through the Common Application. The rest of it is going to actually be requested through Navian for teachers and for counselors. So anyone at Cal High who is going to be helping you with that is going to be submitting their portion through Navian, which is why it's important to sync it with your Common App. But for those that are writing a letter for you that are not from Cal High, you will be going on a Common App and adding them as an other recommender. You'll let them know that they do have to create their Common App account, and that's how they'll submit. All right. Okay, so this is the most, one of the most important parts. We did give this out to students. Hopefully we're getting a good response for it. I haven't checked recently, but we do require that every single senior fill out the PostGrad plan survey. Okay, it's important that they complete this because this is the only way that your counselor will know whether or not you need a letter of recommendation. All right, so if you don't fill this out and don't state that, we may not know, or we may assume that you're just not applying to colleges, or maybe you have other plans, whatever it might be. But we are asking every single senior to please make sure they complete this before or on by September 20th, I think is the deadline. All right, this is the way that we know whether or not, if we are writing a letter of rec on your behalf, based on where you're applying, we will be setting up a one-on-one meeting with the student to just kind of go over everything, maybe ask some additional questions, and make sure that we are in a position to be able to write the best letter for you. All right, so with that, after you've done that post-grad plan survey and you do know that you need a letter of recommendation, we do have a checklist that we want students to follow. One, we obviously want them to update the colleges they're applying to list. When you go into Navian, there's going to be two different questionnaires. There's going to be a student questionnaire and there's going to be a guardian questionnaire. The student questionnaire is required. It just gives us an opportunity to learn more about our seniors, the things that they've been doing outside of their transcript and outside of Cal High, what they hope to do, just a little bit more about their personality. So it's great that they have that completed, because when I do call them in for my one-on-one, that gives me a chance to be able to ask any follow-up questions or ask any sort of clarification on anything. But it's important that that is done before we meet with a student. The guardian questionnaire is optional, but I will say that's probably one of my favorite things to read, because I just think that parents just have obviously we think the best of our kids, and we are able to write a very good positive perspective, where sometimes students are a little humble and a little timid to really brag about themselves, whereas parents really kind of tell us all of it. And so it's super helpful if guardians are able to do it, but it's not required. And then of course, matching the Common App. So once you've created your Common App account, you're going to go into Navians and you are going to essentially sync them. It's pretty easy. There's just a little button you press and they say, what email did you use basically to log into Common App, and then it'll automatically sync it. And so that way everything connects, and when we send our stuff, it gets transported however it does to Common App. All right, and the last thing, we have a lot of students who might be applying early decision, they might be applying early action. Some might have a deadline of October 15th. Some might have a deadline of January 1st. You may sign up and let me know that you need a meeting with me, but maybe your deadline isn't until January 1st. We do prioritize by deadlines. So I definitely try and make sure that I meet with any of my November 1st deadlines right away. And then I kind of go down the list from there. So, so as long as you fill out that letter of the post-grad plan survey, we will know and we will get you on our list and make sure that we connect. All right. So teachers' letters of rec. I know when I met with all of my juniors last year, and we kind of talked a lot about this during our one-on-ones in the spring, for those that did know or at least had an idea that they were going to need a letter of rec, I encouraged them to try and maybe ask them before the end of the school year, and just let them know, and then just kind of send a nice reminder when when school starts in their senior year. But some may not have asked anyone, and that's okay. We encourage you to ask, if you do need one, a teacher that obviously knows you well. A teacher that maybe you have had recently. One that you have had in your freshman year may not be able to speak exactly to how great you are if they haven't seen you in a couple of years. And then one who teaches a course subject, I think, is always key. I think that this is kind of where everything kind of comes into play, where you really want to make sure that you have, on your grid, that you're following it and you're following all the requirements, because there are going to be some schools that are going to say, we want specifically a teacher from the humanities area and one from the STEM area, whatever it might be. Unfortunately, I did have a student who she applied to many, many schools, and I think this is something that was just accidentally overlooked. We tried to rectify the situation and pull back a letter of rec from the teacher and put in the one that was requested. And they just said, I'm sorry, we're just not going to evaluate it. So that's kind of the thing that, you want to make sure that you're not applying to so many schools that you can't keep track of that. You want to make sure that you know each and every single one, following that grid, and making sure that it's all done correctly. All right, so obviously, we want those teachers to be able to highlight your various strengths. The teacher is going to be writing about their experience with you as a student. All right, so it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I breezed through this class and I got an A. It was so easy. Obviously, she knows I'm good at this, whatever. But sometimes it could be a class where maybe you struggled a little bit, but they saw how hard you worked, they saw the grit, they saw your resilience, and they saw you, work hard for your end grade. So definitely, it doesn't have to be one where you just breeze through. It could just be a teacher that you had a good relationship with and a class that you just worked really hard in. All right, next slide. Slow on my end, it's not coming up.
I swear I'm on it over here.
I know.
I will say one of the best teacher letters I ever read, it was like the student's lowest grade they had in all of high school, and it was just a phenomenal letter about how hard they were willing to work. So really don't think that it has to be the class where you just were a stellar student, or like that is a stellar student, but where everything came easily to you, I guess is what I'm saying.
I don't know why it's not switching, but I'm not seeing the next page.
Oh.
Wait, is it? No. Oh, okay. Yes, it is. Sorry. So again, the counselor rec process, make sure that you request it in the post-grad plan survey so that we know that you requested it. Complete that counselor rec checklist. For the teacher rec process, we do, we always say it's best to ask that letter of recommendation in person. Don't send an email and be like, hey, could you write a letter for me? Please go and visit with that teacher when it's convenient during breaks or something, and ask them in person. After they agree, then you may add them to Naviance so that they are able to view your things and able to submit on your behalf. There may be a questionnaire that teachers ask you to complete, but really we are encouraging teachers to, as we said before, write about the experience that they had with you as a student in their class. But again, ask for that letter of recommendation in person. And then, of course, then you can add them on Naviance after so that they can submit on your behalf. And of course, lastly, as I said, teachers are writing so many of these, especially our junior level teachers, and counselors are writing them as well. Just send a thank you note. I think that that's a good thing to learn and a good thing to get in the habit of doing. We do try our best on these letters, and we do take time with them outside of our work day. So don't just let us know. One, and the last thing too is let us know as you do receive decisions, because that's the best part of our job, is hearing from you guys and figuring out how your decision-making process, or that you got into this school or that school. So we love to hear those things. All right. Okay, I'm going financial aid. So financial aid, the FAFSA is something that all students should be filling out, whether or not they believe they do or do not qualify for any aid, because it also opens up some opportunities to specific scholarships within your university. It also opens up some opportunities for some very low interest student loans. But essentially, all students should be filling out the FAFSA regardless of their family income. Okay, so we have students that are filling it out. It does open on December 1st. We do have a rep come in from the college to do our financial aid night, and it's set for January 13th. So last year, for any of those who have known seniors, they rolled out a brand new financial aid application. And to say the least, it was a little bit of a mess. And unfortunately, a lot of universities were left to kind of clean it up, and a lot of students didn't end up learning what their financial aid package until way later. This year, they're hoping to be able to launch on December 1st. I do know, I think in the months of October and November, they're doing some beta testing with certain institutions. So hoping to work out those kinks, which is why our college rep recommended that, let's give it some time. Let's see what happens and make sure there's no major glitches or kinks or changes in the FAFSA. And, we'll definitely hit it hard once we get back from winter break and get started on that. All right, so just stay tuned for more information on that. We'll make sure to share it with you. Again, I mentioned this earlier in regards to the community college, the FT3, the first time full-time free tuition. Again, I think this is just an amazing opportunity for our students, and I think that's why we're continuing to see the rise of students, a higher percentage attend a community college first, which I think is wonderful. A lot of kids always come to me, and parents always ask, scholarships, how do we do this? What do? We need scholarships. And absolutely, but what I will say is that there is no easy way to find free money. It's going to require work. It's going to require a lot of research. Here's a couple tips that we do have. Going Merry seems to be a great site. I've seen it, I've used it, my daughter's used it, and it's been great. It basically is, as it says there, the common app of scholarships. So essentially you put in your profile, you fill out an application, and it kind of pops up all these great things that you could be eligible to apply for. So it's wonderful to go there, fill that out, visit it often, and keep up with it. Naviance, we will be posting, they also have a scholarship tab where you can kind of see a list of national scholarships, but this is also where Ms. Nichols will be posting any of the local and regional scholarships that come through our office. So anything from the PTSA to Rotary Club to, basically anything local and regional that we have to offer, those will be posted there. I will say a bulk of these scholarships really do happen in the spring. I think a lot of these organizations know that, you're still figuring things out, making decisions and applying to colleges during the fall. But definitely a lot of them do open up in the spring. You'll certainly see some occasionally open up in the fall semester as well. So make sure that you're checking that regularly. And then again, always make sure that parents, guardians are checking with their employers. There are a lot of great scholarships oftentimes, especially with a lot of the businesses and companies in the Bay Area that do offer scholarships. So make sure that you're looking at your employer and finding any information on that. That's a great opportunity for students as well. And again, like I said, it really is just about willing to do the legwork and just getting at it early and often. Doing the searches, doing the applications, checking regularly, following up with any local regional scholarships, those kinds of things. So requires a lot of research, but it's definitely doable. All right.
All righty. I will add one other thing about scholarships. We just had, and I'll touch on it a little bit, we just had a couple of our alumni come back today to do a Q&A for our current seniors. And one of the things that one of the panelists brought up is that she just avoided scholarship search engines and she would just Google like scholarships for women in science, scholarships for like other demographics, scholarships for people who insert thing here, maybe like people who babysit, people, like anything you could think of, there's a scholarship for. And so she would just try and find these more niche ones that maybe aren't being put into these scholarship search engines and kind of go for those. And I thought that was a really interesting idea. So thought I'd throw that out there. College and Career Fair, we hosted it last year. This year, Doherty Valley is hosting it. We rotate through all the high schools to host this. Over 100 different schools, career programs. And when we say career programs, like we were saying earlier, that also includes military. So lots and lots of different opportunities are represented here, and great time to go and kind of fine-tune a college list or maybe learn about an opportunity that you wouldn't have heard otherwise. We do ask that max one adult per family just because space is so limited and the reps want to make sure they have time to dedicate to everyone attending. But yeah, this is coming up in just about a month. So thinking about what's next. So this is talking about who takes care of what in the actual application. So on your left here, you see things that are the student's responsibility. So obviously filling out their college applications, they're going to do. We review them when asking, but the student is the one filling those out. They are also requesting and sending transcripts from outside institutions if a student took a class anywhere other than at Cal High. Or I guess I should say, right, if a student was at another school, we send that as well. But outside classes. If they need to request a letter of recommendation, they need to do that. SAT, ACT scores, we didn't talk about very much. Like I said, UCs and CSUs are not using test scores at all. Some schools are going back to require testing, but I would say those are few and far between. Generally speaking, most of what we're seeing for out of state is test optional, where a student can choose whether or not they're wanting to send their scores. And the question we get sometimes is, should they? And that answer is pretty clear cut because it's about, if you're looking at their admitted student profile, is your score strengthening your application? Is it, higher than what they're looking for, or is it below that? So if they need help doing that, certainly we can point them in the right direction, but that's kind of the decision there. If there's any changes to deadlines, they do need to let their recommenders know. Definitely, especially if they decide to apply earlier, but it's also really helpful to know if they're pushing their application back, just because we do have so many to juggle that we want to dedicate all the time we can to each of these application components. Mid-year and final reports, those are just different kinds of transcripts. Mid-year, as it implies, happens after first semester, and final reports we'll take care of at the end of the year when everyone has decided what their post-grad plan is. What the school does, when requested, we handle sending the transcripts. Students might also hear about something called a school profile. That is a document that we create every year that tells universities a little bit about Cal High, our policies, what we have to offer students, and that accompanies their transcript and their application. The secondary school report is similar, right? Just kind of a cover letter almost, if you will, for the student's transcripts. We also send recommendation letters when requested, and teachers do the same as well. So next steps for students, as we mentioned earlier, the post-grad plan survey, that's something we ask for all students. We want to know how we can support them this year. This is especially critical for people who need a letter of recommendation. That is how they're telling us that they do need one. So in the post-grad plan survey this year, they're going to tell us which options they're considering, and that helps us make sure that they're getting the information they need this year in a timely manner. We asked them to bookmark the senior survival guide. A lot of the nuance pieces, right, when we're saying, oh, do this on Naviance, add this here. The senior guide has all of those processes outlined, a lot of times even with screenshots to show them what to do, but it's all there ready to accompany them while they're actually completing it. Updating the colleges I'm applying to list, as I said, this includes community colleges, trade schools. I wish we could change the name of it slightly, but that is what it's called. So please have everyone do that. Continuing to attend those college visits. We also have upcoming presentations and workshops. As Cheryl said, we also have a PIQ workshop. We host workshops to work on the different application components. I'll get to a workshop in just a second on this next slide that I think is very exciting. And then just saving the date for you all for January 13th, the financial aid presentation with the rep from a college that really gets into the nuts and bolts there. Parents, if we could ask you to help your student get in the habit of checking your email or checking their email. Lots of important communication happening from people, especially colleges are going to be communicating with them this way. We can support with a lot of things as their counselor. The one thing we can't do is fix having them missed a deadline from their college. We can get those documents in as fast as possible, but there are colleges that will say, sorry, our deadlines are our deadlines. So it's really important to stay on top of that. One other piece of advice we have is to submit UC CSU applications for those doing those at least a week prior to November 30th. It's pretty inevitable that the day of the 30th, there's a lot of technical difficulties with the site crashing, and I just don't want that stress on anyone. So that is our advice. We say, please do that before you eat your Thanksgiving turkey. All right, so the opportunity I was talking about, these are Jackson and Fiona, our wonderful class of 2024, a couple of our alumni that have done several of these panels now, and they're always so insightful, really reflective. They're telling it like it is, what they wish they had done differently, what they're glad they did, and just answering any questions that come at them. So if there are students on this call that want to attend, there is one more happening tomorrow. If you submit this before 8 a.m., we can get you a pass to attend during student support. This is also, if your student isn't here and can't register right now, it is available in the Google Classroom as well for them to sign up for this, and their email. It's gone out a couple different spots, but wonderful alumni with a lot to share and happy to do so. They're so generous with their time. They're literally leaving for college like Monday, so this is like their last hurrah. All right, and then how can you support? So you all took the time to come and hang out with us tonight and listen to what we had to say and learn what your students are learning. So here's our advice from a couple people and the counseling department who see hundreds of families go through this every year and what tends to be the most helpful. So really important to remember that the student is in the driver's seat here, right? They're the ones taking the lead on this, and really your job is in the passenger seat, making sure that if they're asking questions about the directions, you're pointing them in a way, but they're the one doing the driving. We've also seen it be really successful for families to have like a weekly college date where they've set aside a specific amount of time where they're going to talk about college then, because it can be a little all-consuming and students can sometimes feel just an immense amount of pressure if college seems always to be the default topic. It can create a lot of stress around that. So having a designated time and really making that purposeful can make it feel like college application season and post-high school planning is one piece of their life versus their whole everything right now. Proofreading is a great way you can support, checking for any typos in grammar, but really it should be the student's voice that is coming through. Admissions officers are so skilled at being able to tell when an adult has too heavy of a hand. It doesn't sound like a teenager anymore. So really making sure that you're keeping it at that proofreading level, maybe asking some questions, but letting the students' work be theirs. As Ms. Cheryl said, the Guardian questionnaire is so helpful. Please help us by bragging on your kid. We know you have so much to say, and a lot of times you see them from a different vantage point than they see themselves, so you can provide a different perspective than what they're seeing, and it can be really, really informative. Providing any necessary documents to your student and completing the FAFSA or the CATA, which opens in December, as Cheryl was saying. We will do that January night, so just even on our website, there's a list of documents that you'll need to be able to do this. Probably don't need to get them together quite yet. We have some time, but supporting with that just because tax forms are so foreign to a 17, 18-year-old. A couple other things, respecting your students' privacy. As we have said, this can be very stressful and there's a tendency to want to talk about it, but at the same time, realizing that this can be a very vulnerable process. It feels sometimes like too much is put on the outcomes of these, when in reality, so many things about this process can be outside of a student's control. But so just respecting that they may want to keep things a little more private. Rejection is inherent in the process, and having that all out for the world to see can be difficult. So, which leads me to my last point. You're really their go-to for stress relief and reassurance, knowing that everything's going to work out. They've done their research, they have a well-crafted list, they've thought about their plans, and they're making the right next step for them, even if it may be a little different than what other people are doing, that they know themselves and they can navigate this process successfully. All right. You're not the only ones providing stress relief. We're here to help with that too. We get tons of questions from students. Like we said, we do this hundreds of times every year. So please have them come see us. Our drop-in hours are break, lunch, after school. We're also available by appointment. We're having workshops. We're really doing what we can to make a stressful process at least a little bit more manageable. But also it's normal to have some stress around this. They're coming up on a big life transition. So stress is okay. It's just when it gets to be too manageable, let's try and break it down a little bit. Yeah. I see some questions popping up in the chat.
Yeah. I mean, why don't you take a look at that, Kelly? I'm just going to bring up a couple things. I think one, yes, this is being recorded and it will go onto our YouTube page as well. Check for it maybe early next week. We can also provide the slide deck, but I will say what's even better than that is our senior guidebook. It goes a lot more in depth than what we are writing here on these slides. It will give you step-by-step tutorials, like Kelly was saying, including sometimes some visuals and some screenshots of exactly how to do things like adding school to Naviance or adding teachers for your letter of rec. Please bookmark that guidebook. I promise you it will be a great resource. So yes, and I think, yes, there were a couple of questions. There aren't too many, so that's good. We can go over them.
Yeah. I see a question about UC essays. And the answer is the essays, I don't even like calling them essays. They call them personal insight questions, or like little mini writing responses. They do 4 of them, and the exact same 4 go to every UC campus they apply to. There's not a way to personalize them per campus. And really, they're not asking you like a why this college essay. You're telling them about yourself. So that's kind of the reason behind that.
Great. How to get the senior guidebook. The senior guidebook is actually on our counseling website. So if you go to our main Cal High website, you'll see under students, that'll take you directly to our Cal High our counseling website. And there will be a link that says senior guide. And that's where you can bookmark it and refer to it as many times as you want to.
Yeah, if you do Google Cal High counseling, we come up right away too.
Okay, perfect. I don't know that. I think MR, what is MR? Oh, MR on the Common App grid, that is your mid-year report.
Yeah,
which
I
is
think I answered.
that, yeah, that we send, some schools will require that we send the students' grades after their first semester because they do consider that in the evaluation. So, for a lot of these schools and every school, senior year absolutely matters.
Yeah. Upcoming essay workshop. There was one posted on Naviance that students could sign up for. I think that one is full, so we're working on scheduling another one. It is only for students because only students are writing their essays, so no parents cannot attend that. Letters of recommendation are not needed for UC, and they're not needed for the TAG program.
Correct. Great. If scholarships ask for a letter of rec from a teacher, how do we get it to them? A lot of it is just working with the teacher or working with your counselor if they are providing a letter for you. Basically, oftentimes you will let them know where it needs to be submitted. Sometimes a lot of these applications for scholarships are typically online, and usually we are sent a link or something from that scholarship so that we could submit it directly. Rarely do I ever, does anyone really hand an actual letter of recommendation to the student to take care of it. If anything, we prefer that we kind of send it on our own to the Scholarship Foundation, but each scholarship will be different and they'll give you specific directions on how to do that. All right. Well, I think we went a little bit over an hour, but we did pretty good, Kelly. So hopefully, this information was helpful. I know it's a lot, and I know that there is still so much more that you have questions about. It is a hard time. I myself have a senior. I also have another child who is in college, so I get it. It's just a stressful time in the household right now. So I hear you, but please encourage your students to come and see us. Ask questions. This is the time of year where we fully expect to see our seniors on a regular basis. And a lot of times their questions could be a very quick 30-second answer. Have them pop in at lunch or brunch or something and ask. But yes, we are here for them.
All right. Thank you all. Enjoy your evening.